In the newly released film Val, actor Val Kilmer, who's now in his early 60s, reemerges before the world after being out of the spotlight for years. Far from the cool, calm, and collected star he once was, Kilmer presents himself as almost a broken-down shell. His face, which is at one point beaming and chiseled, now looks droopy and sullen, with dark eyebrows that gave him an eerily, almost Nixon-like aesthetic. Even more disturbing is his manner of speaking. While he once boomed with confidence and gusto, he now speaks in a thin, robotic rasp, the result of a procedure performed on his trachea to treat the throat cancer he was diagnosed with in 2015. Kilmer managed to beat cancer, but he was left with that scratchy, alien-like voice box, which takes a little getting used to. But once you manage to get past it, it becomes abundantly clear he is very much the same person we all know and love, albeit a bit older, wiser, and solemn these days. Val gives audiences an inside look on a star's fall from grace. Through Kilmer's narration, viewers get a first-hand account of the actor's journey, from making amateur 16mm home movies with his brother when they were children to starring in iconic hit films like Top Gun, Batman Forever, and The Doors. Val gives audiences a revealingly candid look into the actor's behind-the-scenes personal lives. The film spans 4 decades, drawing from thousands of hours of footage. In the documentary, Kilmer also opens up about his cancer diagnosis and admits he's still recovering from its repercussions, even though he's currently in remission. It's difficult for him to speak, but he has a story that's worth telling. He used to talk quite fast. That was part of his whole shtick, as can be seen in films like Real Genius. But everything about him these days is slower, and it takes a significant amount of effort for him to speak at all. As such, he can't afford to mince his words. Val is directed by Leo Scott and Ting Pu. The film is a portrait of Kilmer as an actor and celebrity, but most importantly, as a human. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. And stick around to see how Val Kilmer fell out of the public's good graces and eventually began to resent stardom. Kilmer self-documented much of his life story. Kilmer is a man ahead of his time. Long before the days of social media and the world's current obsession with self-recording, Val kept a video camera constantly rolling at home, on movie sets, and wherever else he went. The film opens with a clip of him clowning around with Rick Rossovich during the filming of Top Gun, and there's a particularly humorous segment in which John Frankenheimer, director of The Island of Dr. Moreau, orders Kilmer to stop his video recording. Kilmer then promises to do so only if Frankenheimer vows not to leave the film. Kilmer got the reputation of being a difficult actor to work with, and we see a little bit why he earned this distinction in the film. But it wasn't because he was some kind of entitled prima donna. Rather, he cared deeply about his work, perhaps a little too much at times. But being difficult was just the price he made everyone pay for forcing him to take part in a system that he found very little satisfaction in. Looking at Val Kilmer today, it might be pretty tempting to label him a man who lost pretty much everything: his voice, his looks, his career, his family. His ugly divorce from British actress Joanne Whalley in 1996 clearly hurt him deeply. His aging, almost unrecognizable appearance may even at times remind you of Mickey Rourke's in The Wrestler. At one point in the film, we find Kilmer at home with a bunch of items sprawled across the floor. In the middle of that sea of chaos is a worn copy of Entertainment Weekly featuring him on the cover as Batman. As we soon find out, playing the billionaire crime fighter was not necessarily a glowing experience for him, which explains why he walked away from the role after just one film. At another point in the film, we find Kilmer at Comic-Con signing autographs on Top Gun posters, a scene that is again vaguely reminiscent of The Wrestler. Kilmer knew himself better than anyone else. While you might be tempted to mark it as yet another over-glorified film about a washed-up movie star, what makes Val a decent, heart-tugging movie is that Kilmer brings the film an incredible sense of self-awareness. He's had so much tragedy in his life, going all the way back to when he was a teen, and one of his brothers died in a jacuzzi after suffering an epileptic seizure. Kilmer says that horrible experience left him feeling raw with grief. But in the film, what Kilmer presents to us is a sort of dramatized version of what so many stars go through. Celebrities tend to have a defining moment in their lives, where they're on top of the world, often followed by a fall from grace. They still might be famous, but they finally come down to our level and admit their humanity. For Kilmer, the ups and downs of his career hit us particularly distinctly because his fall from the top was in part his own doing. He was a serious actor who attended Juilliard and rose to fame in the 80s. In 1983, he appeared in the Broadway production The Slab Boys alongside Sean Penn and Kevin Bacon. His subsequent casting in Top Gun elevated his career substantially and transformed him into one of the most sought-after players in the industry. Did he want the fame he received? Yes and no. He wanted something more than what he became. He desired to be recognized as the inspired actor that he was, but more than anything, he wanted to make great films. This was a difficult balancing act for any actor who came up in the 80s. Val offers an unparalleled look into Kilmer's mind. In Val, Kilmer takes us all on a previously unexplored journey through his career. Each movie he took part in becomes a lens through which we get to dissect his ever-changing blend of ego and idealism. He chased after movie roles with tenacity, producing his own audition tapes for films like Full Metal Jacket and Goodfellas. But despite his ambition and dedicated focus, he had an uncanny way of blowing opportunities that came his way. At times, he picked the wrong projects, as was the case when he signed on to star in the critically scorned film Willow. On other occasions, his misguided cautiousness led him to talk himself out of projects he probably should have done. Kilmer knew The Doors was something special. He spent months wearing leather pants and ceaselessly studying Jim Morrison's moves before shooting started. Even in that case, his almost neurotic fixation with his subject got to be a bit much. He even indicates at one point that it was in a large way the catalyst that led to the destruction of his marriage. In 1995, he donned the Batsuit for Batman Forever, but as it turned out, it was that costume that Kilmer hated the most about participating in the film. He couldn't move, never could hear his fellow actors, and felt like some kind of puppet. That kind of talk makes him sound like an artist until you realize what movies Kilmer said yes to instead, like The Island of Dr. Moreau or The Saint. He slowly started to reject fame, or at least he stopped trying to cultivate it. But part of his downfall was the fact that he never learned the vital lessons that actors like Tom Cruise understand, that cultivating stardom is exactly the way you get to do the good films. If you reject stardom, it might just reject you back. Val touches on the most important chapters of Kilmer's journey. Kilmer is grateful for the fact that he's still close to his children and lives next door to his daughter. Family is clearly one of the most important things in his life. Val focuses heavily on his lifelong fascination with Mark Twain, who he enjoyed the opportunity of playing in several projects throughout his career. But the film has very little to say about his connection to the fringe religion Christian Science he grew up with. For the majority of the 4+ decades covered in Val, Kilmer comes across as a man of obsession, someone who could be either his own worst enemy or his own savior depending on the situation. At the height of his career, there was something very entitled about his personality, but these days he has an aura of an individual who was dealt his just desserts and lived to tell the tale. He may have fallen from stardom and the public's favor, but he did so in his own unique way. Val has a world premiere at Cannes Film Festival on July 7, 2021. It's scheduled to debut in theaters in a limited release on July 23rd. You can catch it on Amazon Prime on August 6, 2021. Now it's time to hear from you. In the comments section below, let us know which one of Val Kilmer's films was your favorite. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.